All I can say is I hope this is working. I hope you can hear me. It's been quite the morning. So I'm sorry that I wasn't here on time and that I've had to put everybody off for this long of a period of time. So welcome everyone that is here. I'm sorry I'm late. Welcome to all you imagination connoisseurs, and welcome to this, the 70th, I cannot believe it, the 70th live Robservations chat. Unbelievable that you guys, these members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community are here. Thank you for following me despite my technical difficulties today. Yes, it was a very frustrating experience with my technical difficulties, but when you're switching between editorial software and you're downloading entire elements of a feature film, I think I just pushed my computer a little far. So anyway, I apologize for that, and thank you for coming back here, and thank you for joining me. And I'm sorry I'm now an hour late. I had my whole day planned, but a bummer that I had to run late. So I am sorry. But today, a lot of great stuff happened. The announcement that Bill and Ted 3 is getting made. Who would have thought? The trailer for Quentin Tarantino's movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood dropped. Looks great to me. Looks like another triumph for Quentin. Stranger Things 3, set in the summer of 1985, set over July 4th weekend, just like Jaws was set over the July 4th weekend. Very, very exciting. Again, a lot of exciting stuff happening. It's just amazing. We hear that Anson Mount is not going to return to the third season of Discovery. I'm sure they'll mine some other captain. We'll get Captain Decker or Captain Garth, maybe. Who knows what we're going to get on Star Trek Discovery? Do I care? I don't know. I'll still tune in. But anyway, once again, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community, I want to begin today with some letters. I don't know if you ever went to summer camp, but when I was in summer camp, I went to summer camp for many years when I was a kid. I first went to YMCA's Camp Orkyla on Orcas Island in the San Juan, this part of the San Juan Islands chain, which I loved. And then for some inexplicable reason, my mom, I guess YMCA camp was for littler kids. But then I was moved over to the Flying Horseshoe Ranch in Cle Elum, Washington. I learned to ride horses myself, and then later helped younger kids learn to ride horses. Western, by the way, if you want to know. I do not know how to ride English, but I can. I know my way around a horse, so that's pretty good. But anyway, as I'm wont to do, I am just astonished by the letters that I keep getting from people, and I really want to say, a hearty thank you to everybody who's writing in. I've told people you could find me on my regular email, or if you write me at the website theburnetwork.net, which I'm getting pretty proud of as it gets bigger. My webmaster is truly a wizard. I think he went to Hogwarts when he was a young man. Who knows? But this was actually an email I got from one of you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. And this letter is from Joseph, Iraq. Now, forgive me if I mispronounce these Balkan names. It's tough. But Joseph, Iraq, or is it Iraq? I hope I pronounced it well. Joseph has been here a lot. I wanted to read this because I really like this letter for various reasons. And Gilbert, of course, it wouldn't be a podcast if Gilbert was not barking. But Joseph says, "Hey, Rob, I watch your show and you on the Campia show daily." Gilbert, "Watching and listening to you guys talk about movies, superheroes, Star Wars, and Star Trek is what relieves me of the stress every day after work. Even if it means disagreeing with you on the first season of Discovery. I'm a kid of the 90s, and coming from Croatia, formerly a part of Yugoslavia, back in those days, largely due to post-war circumstances, we didn't have a movie theater. Barely anyone had a computer, and internet, even up to the 2000s, was a luxury. And to some, it was, what's internet? Even with all that, my first movie-going experience was in 1994, watching Lion King on the big screen with my school friends in a gym that was redone to serve as a movie theater. Later, Aladdin too. That's why when I see those trailers for all the live action adaptations, I get teary eyed. During those times, the only way we could see great movies was on the television by renting or waiting for a national television broadcast of them. I was always, as a kid, thinking, why don't we have a theater in a city of nearly 70,000 people? During the 2000s, times were changing. We got better stuff on TV. I got hooked on 24. Now, as an adult, I could go to bigger cities that had huge movie theaters, but I was still missing out on the start of the MCU. In 2008, I got my first salary. I got myself my first computer and high-speed internet. And after that, like Obi-Wan would say, I've taken a first step into a larger world. Over the years, I've also always collected comics, mostly Italian published, which I still do. Eventually, in 2011, my city got its first multiplex, and the adventure could start. I've joined the golden age of superhero movies, TV shows, and all stuff nerd. Even though my friends don't watch superhero movies, I don't mind going to the theater alone. I do manage to drag them to watch Avengers. I've also started to appreciate movies outside genre films, the ones I would not usually watch, like Green Book, which I found fantastic, and it gave me a little bit of teary eyes, knowing people really used to be treated that way. When it comes to Trek, I grew up watching Captain Janeway on TV, and the first Trek and favorite remained First Contact. First Trek movie and favorite remained First Contact. After Voyager ended, I pretty much didn't like anything up to the first season of Discovery. Now, come 2019, I have my own steady income. I go to the cinema regularly for my MCU or DCFU regular fix. I came back to my art after many years of not doing it and enjoying your show. For some reason, YouTube does not allow super chats from my region. Otherwise, you'd see me there more often. But because I can't support you that way, I decided to draw you a little something in the upcoming weeks. I'm guessing Vesna has a similar story. Thanks for all you do, Rob, and keep doing it. I don't think I've seen a nicer man on YouTube doing a podcast than you. Best regards, Joseph. P.S. Feel free to share this with the gang. Well, first of all, Joseph, I love having you here. But most of all, what I really loved about your letter is, we here, especially in the States, tend to take for granted things like movie theaters. We've never not had movie theaters. Certainly in my life, I've never not had movie theaters. And hearing your story and realizing, we don't even know what it's like to have a country like Yugoslavia ripped apart by sectarian violence, and the Balkan conflict was something we still don't know much about in the United States. I knew what Yugoslavia was because my best friend Jeff Swafford had an aunt from Yugoslavia, and she would come visit. I always thought the name Yugoslavia was cool. I like to say it. I don't know why. It sounded great to say. And now, of course, Yugoslavia doesn't exist. And I can't imagine what it was like to grow up in, as you said, a post-war torn environment in basically a European nation. And to just not have television or not have the internet or not have things that we just took for granted, and to hear that, you couldn't even see the first Iron Man when we got the first Iron Man. It's an amazing story that you tell, and it's always, to me, it's a constant reminder of the things that we take for granted. I've always said to people, it's amazing to me that we have stop signs that people just all stop at. We have stop lights. We have an infrastructure. We turn on the water here, and there's cold water, there's hot water. You turn on the internet, hey, it's right there. Television signals, right there. Anything we want, you can just roll down to the movie theater and buy your AMC pass, or go to the ArcLight, have a drink, have a glass of wine, get your popcorn before you go see a movie. I've never in my life known what it's like to be without these kinds of ordinary, at least in my mind, ordinary things. But to hear your story, it makes me once again take stock in my own life and feel privileged to have grown up in the United States and never had to worry about. My geek interests, I've always been able to satiate my geeky desires. I can't imagine what it's like. Your story really, it took it home. It really made me think about, wow, it's one thing to intellectually understand that the rest of the world is different all over. It's another thing to actually hear from somebody who has a firsthand account of what it was like to be a geek, and not even, I mean, you're still buying Italian comic books. It just made me take stock and realize what we have here, and how important it is to remember that, life's pretty great. And we living in the United States, despite all the problems, despite the enormous homeless problem we have in Los Angeles, despite the fact that we are divided by partisan politics here in the States, we still have it so great where we are. And here it's been great to come to know you through the chat room. And I also wanted to say something else. Look, I never want you to feel that by not participating or supporting my channel via super chats is anything that you need to worry about. Anytime somebody sends me a super chat, I'm astonished and grateful, truly, from the bottom of my heart. So don't worry about that. What's more important to me is that people are here, and you're not just interacting with me, but you're interacting with each other. I mean, that's what I hope that I'm fostering here. This truly is the Post-Geek Singularity community. By the way, someone on one of the comments on one of these videos said, there is no such thing as the Post-Geek Singularity community. Like, what is that? And I wrote back and said, yes, there is. I made it up. Like I've often said to everybody on this channel, I mean, what is art but if nothing but a blank piece of paper, or a blank page, or a blank canvas? Every piece of art or every idea starts, it doesn't exist yet. You have to conjure it into existence. I read about the singularity. I read Ray Kurzweil's books, and if you haven't, I mean, he's written some really interesting books about the singularity, and perhaps the idea of the post-geek singularity doesn't quite fit in to Kurzweil's ideas of what the singularity is. I just sort of co-opted that idea as if, truly what the singularity is when artificial intelligence becomes sentient and self-aware. So to say we live in the geek world never became self-aware, but I'd like to think that it kind of did. In my mind, the post-geek singularity is when the world all suddenly decided that they were geeks, which is how I define the post-geek singularity. Is all of our geeky interests, they went mainstream. So no longer did we geeks have to live in the shadows. So yes, there is a post-geek singularity, because I have declared it as part of the ongoing performance art project that is me, Robert Meyer Burnett. So I invite everybody, and by the way, everyone's welcome. And if a person says there is no post-geek singularity, I'm saying yes, there is. We live in it, and you people who are here right now listening to me talk are members of this post-geek singularity community. So Joseph, I was, again, I love the diversity of the letters I get. Once again, it really made me think. I was like, wow, that's amazing that I never even thought of what it would be like I live in a town of 70,000 people and there's no movie theater. I would have been the kind of guy that would have borrowed someone's barn and set up a movie theater. I would have brought my collection of DVDs, and I would have had our Blu-rays, and I would have curated. I would have started. You know what? If I'd known you in the 90s, I would have flown over, man. I would have come to your town. I would have brought a projector with me. I would have set up an awesome kick-ass sound system, and I would have hung out, in Croatia, and we would have rocked some genre films, man. It would have been great. But maybe I'll do that in the future for somebody. I think that would actually be kind of cool. There was a time in America where I think it was the Alamo Drafthouse had this they had this road trip where they went to Devil's Tower and set up a big sound system in a movie theater, and they showed Close Encounters. I think they went to Martha's Vineyard and showed Jaws or something like that. I would totally do that. But listen, Joseph, thank you for your letter. I really enjoyed it. Here's another letter I got from Chris Clark. Chris Clark says, hello, Robert. I've been watching your Robservations for a while now. My first thought was, this is exactly what I want to do, because I myself am very opinionated. But as I started listening to your YouTube posts, I began to get intrigued. Even though you and I agree on most things, you started posing viewpoints I'd never considered before. That's why I think you should continue to do what you're doing. I was born in Tucson, Arizona, and I've been disabled all my life. I can't tell you how many looks I get from people when they see that my legs don't work exactly the way theirs do. I entered a state of depression that caused a decline of my physical and mental health due to a breakup in my personal life, and because of this, I landed in the hospital which is where I'm at now. Despite the loss of my home and all my possessions, I've decided not to become part of a statistic that declares me dead. I've decided I'm going to live. My one escape has always been movies and comic books, and I didn't know that any of my interests could be mainstream until I saw you on Collider Heroes, and I heard about the DCEU and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's inspired me to begin writing a script for a Superman story among my many other interests. I hope to one day make it to California to share my many stories and ideas with people. I want you to know that if I make it, you're an inspiration for me to move on. Thanks, Chris Clark. I mean, what more do I have to say? What more does and this is amazing. And Chris, if you're watching right now, I would say to you, one of the really interesting things about writing, say, a Superman story is that could be the way you could actually break into comics. And you can find, one of the great things about the internet is you can connect with people. There's people out there that dream of becoming comic book artists, but they might not have a story to tell, and they need a story to tell. And I would implore you to seek out people online, and maybe that's a great way to start working in your field. If you want to become a comic writer, there's a lot of interesting books. Like there's like writing. There was a book, I think it's called Writing Comics the Marvel Way or something, and you can find. There's a number of great books on the making and how do people do comics, how do people make comics. And if you're writing Superman stories, that's actually a way you could see them realized. If you were coming out of the gate thinking, I'm going to write the next Superman movie, hell, they haven't even scheduled it. They haven't made another Man of Steel is 6 years old now, I think, and they haven't made another Man of Steel. They haven't made another Superman movie, but they're always publishing Superman comics. So that might be an interesting way for you to start a career. And I think you should absolutely stick with it and ply your craft. And I think it's great that you don't want to become a statistic. So good on you, sir. And once again, I am humbled at the letters that I receive from people. I think they're amazing. So keep them coming. Anyway, the topic at hand today is, first of all, they announced that one of my favorite directors, Wong Kar-Wai, who I've talked about before on this channel. I'm a huge fan of Wong Kar-Wai. He's not made a movie since 2013. His last film was The Grand Master. That was about Ip Man. And Ip Man, of course, had 3 famous movies made about him. And Wong Kar-Wai's was also about Ip Man. Look, I like the Ip Man movies a lot. They're really, really good. If you like martial arts movies, check them out. But Wong Kar-Wai's, like all of his movies, was incredibly lyrical, and his new movie is called Blossoms. Apparently, I think it was called Blossoms. Hang on, let me check to get this correct. I'm going to check, and I'm going to see, because I think it was Blossoms. I might have got my wires crossed, but here I am. Yes, it is Blossoms, and Blossoms is supposed to be part of a thematic trilogy he began with In the Mood for Love and 2049 or 2046, pardon me. And Blade Runner 2049 or 2046 and 2049, so close together. But it's a sequel to that, a thematic sequel. And it really got me thinking. Wong Kar-Wai is a creator who, for whatever reason, his stories really sort of permeate my soul. I was thinking, if you wanted to get to know me, there's like a 10-pack of movies I would give to people, whether it was significant others or professional business partners, or anybody that wanted to get to know me. I would give them these movies, and I would say, these are movies that not only do I think they're good movies, like I wouldn't give somebody The Empire Strikes Back if I really wanted them to get to know me. Now, of course, I love Star Wars, I love science fiction, but I don't think that those things define who I am as a person walking around on this planet, part of the real world. I mean, collectively, I love science fiction, fantasy, and horror films, but I don't know if genre movies really get to the crux of who I am as a person. And then it got me thinking. I was like, well, I wonder, like, I've always been I've always been judgmental when I go to somebody's house, not necessarily in a bad way, but I look at people's media. Like, I used to judge my grandparents. I'm like, how come you don't have enough? Why don't you have more books? My grandfather had all of these great books that I um, like William Makepeace Thackeray. My grandfather had a bunch of his books, and I took them all. But I realized they were all books. They were all books from his time in school and college, like when he was a student at Princeton. I'm like, these books belong to Ralph Schoenfeld. They're from 1922, and his copy of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was from 1914, which I coveted my whole life. And I realized, my grandfather probably hadn't read a book in 50 years. He just wasn't that kind of guy. He didn't like to read books. He was a pragmatist. He was not a dreamer. And the books that he had that I loved, that I still have, they were all from his school days. And I was judgmental about my own grandfather. I'm like, we never talked about books. I never asked him about any of the books he had in his den that clearly had not been cracked open since he moved into that house way before I was born. So I've always been, whenever I go to someone's house, I look at what movies do they own and what books do they have. Just because, one, I'm looking for some common ground. I'm always looking for common ground that we can discuss. Like I can talk to somebody like, oh, hey, whenever I met somebody from the UK growing up, I either mentioned Doctor Who or the Thunderbirds, because everybody from the UK would know about those. Or in college, I always talked about music, because people from the UK are very well versed in the pop music of the day. And it was always a way to, and Gilbert thinks so too, right? Right, buddy? Don't you think so? Here, come on up. Come on up. You want to come up? Come up, dude. Come on. Come on up. Here you go. Say hello to the folks at home. Gilbert says hello. What do you think, buddy? Do you like pop music? What about you? Do you think? I don't judge Gilbert. Gilbert's taste in literature is extremely limited these days. I mean, he is only 15 months old, so he doesn't want to hear it. But I think that I don't know what that says about me, but I was judgmental. I've told the story about an old girlfriend of mine, how all of her music was on cassette tapes, and she had the cassette tapes all like thrown into a wicker basket. I mean, that was like fingers on nails on a chalkboard to me. I'm like, what? How can you do that? I mean, line them all up, have spines out, alphabetize your music, But so it really got me thinking about the kind of movies that define me and why they define me. And Wong Kar-Wai is one of those directors who, for whatever reason, his movies are what my soul believes. I believe that our souls kind of point us, and I mean souls, whatever our inner essence is. You can call it our eternal soul, whatever you want to call it. Whatever consciousness, we don't understand consciousness, but whatever consciousness really is, whatever's inside us, whatever moves us. Why do I cry at The Color Purple and at the end of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan? I don't know, but there's a middle ground somewhere that speaks to my soul. And there's movies that are very indicative of what I believe, what my worldview is. And Wong Kar-Wai, his movies are about two things, which seem to me, on the surface, they have crime elements, they have youth. He made a wuxia movie, a martial arts movie that at one point. He made a movie about the relationship two men have. But basically, Wong Kar-Wai's movies are about longing. They're about romantic longing, and they're also about the wonder and the magic of life in a city. And I've kind of felt like that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm always full of romantic longing, and not just about, women or significant others, but the romance of life, the romance, the goodness of humanity, and having adventures and going out into the world. And I've always loved cities, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know when you pass by somebody on a street corner what could happen. The glances that you have with people, girls you might meet in a bar that you never see again, that you might have a connection with. It's just the romance of cities and the romantic longing that we all have just about life. And Wong Kar-Wai's movies, the way he shoots them. I was reading an article. He shot one of my favorite Wong Kar-Wai movies is Chungking Express, which was on my list of C's. And I read an article. He basically was making his wuxia movie, The Ashes of Time, and it was taking too long, and he was waiting for some equipment, and he takes a long time to make his movies. And he basically improv'd Chungking Express. He was writing the script pages the day he shot them. So there was a lot of improv, and there was and yet he was able to capture this romance and this idea of the city and that romantic longing. And being basically his characters are wandering around pondering they want to fall in love. They want that connection with another person. And Christopher Doyle's amazing cinematography and really influential. I really love his films. And In the Mood for Love, if you haven't seen it, In the Mood for Love, talk about a movie about romantic longing, about these two people that are in different relationships and they pass by each other in the hall. If you haven't seen In the Mood for Love, you got to get the Blu-ray. It's unbelievable. Criterion put it out. What a movie. What a movie. And Wong Kar-Wai is coming back. He hasn't made a movie since 2013. I'm so excited. Anyway, for those of you who might be interested, other movies about that I would consider almost famous, especially the long version. I just relate to that movie as a kid, as a youth. I mean, I didn't go on the road with the Allman Brothers in real life, but I was always pursuing my film interests in some way. And, whether I was a video pirate or going to screenings or going to the Seattle Film Festival or meeting people involved in the film scene. I mean, I was pursuing my interests from a young age, and that film really speaks to my heart for some reason. I love Patrick Fugit's character, young Cameron Crowe, the young Cameron Crowe proxy that he plays, just really, really speaks to me. Every time I watch that movie, I put it on. I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna watch the beginning, and it sucks me in. I have to watch the whole thing. Another movie, Wings of Desire. Wings of Desire was another movie, interestingly enough, that was really pretty much improv. I mean, a lot of it, they just went out and shot stuff, and you had a poet who worked on the script with Wim Wenders. But again, even though it's a movie about angels, which, by the way, I can't relate to angels at all, but if there were angels, I'd like to believe that there are angels just like how they're depicted in Wings of Desire. And Wings of Desire really is a movie about the beauty of humanity. The beauty of the everyday, the beauty of the mundane. Those angels observe. They're not on the battlefield. They're not on Wall Street. They're not in the seats of power around the world. These angels are just following around real people and listening to their thoughts and fears and hopes and dreams. And it really is about even heaven is enamored of the everyday. And I love that. I mean, I love that about that movie. I love that movie so much. A lot of people don't like it because it's so slow and it's black and white and color and it's languidly paced, but it has such beautiful language in it, and the thoughts. I just love, and the idea that the magic, that heaven is all around us. Peter Falk turns out to, well, I don't want to tell you, but if you haven't seen it, it's so great. But it's all about the joys of smoking a cigarette and drinking a cup of coffee at the same time. I don't smoke. I'm not a smoker. I've smoked in the past. I've enjoyed it actually when I would drink alcohol. I used to smoke cigarettes, but I was never a big smoker. But that idea, the sensual pleasure. I mean, I love that. A really crisp glass of Chardonnay or Pinot Grigio or a really strong Shiraz when you have it with a great piece of filet mignon or something. I mean, those sensual pleasures, and Wings of Desire, gets into that, because what are human beings if not creatures to enjoy the sensual pleasures of enjoying our own existence, our own flesh, whether we get to touch the flesh of another that we are completely enamored of, or whether we get to just eat great food or take a warm shower or feel the seawater cascading over you. I mean, Wings of Desire has elements of that. I mean, I'm a complete sensualist in that way. I mean, I love experiencing the five senses, hopefully more if I'm psychic in some way. But that's another movie that speaks to me. But then on the other hand, a movie like To Live and Die in LA, for whatever reason, I totally identify with Richard Chance, this completely amoral, he's a real dick. William Peterson as Richard Chance. He's a Secret Service agent. He's a complete dick, but he's completely single-minded in his purpose to take down counterfeiter Rick Masters, played by Willem Dafoe. I mean, and he treats women badly, which I don't believe in, but he's single-minded. He's like, he says in the movie, I'm going to take Masters down. I don't give a shit how I do it. And he's single-minded in purpose. And it might not have gone well for him when you get to the end of that movie. If you haven't seen To Live and Die in LA, it's William Friedkin's movie. It came out in October of 1985. And man, do I love it. But I totally identify with the protagonist's relentless pursuit of justice, no matter what happens. He's going to continue and pursue his goal, no matter where he goes or what he does. So, I mean, these are the kinds of movies, whether it's Wong Kar-Wai, whether it's Wim Wenders, whether it's Almost Famous. In a way, they're directors too. It's not just Almost Famous. I really relate to Say Anything. I really relate to Jerry Maguire. There's directors that have these worldviews that basically are pro-humanity. Even Stanley Kubrick, I believe, is pro-humanity. If nothing else, Stanley Kubrick, my favorite director of all time, who also speaks to my soul. Alex DeLarge, a despicable human being, but there's something about the fact that he's a very complex individual. He can love Beethoven, but he still likes a bit of he likes to have his drugged milk and a little bit of the ultra violence. He's a complete dichotomy, and I should hate him. But Stanley Kubrick makes me fascinated by him, and that's another movie that I would say probably make people run away in terror, but it's a movie that sort of defines me. It really does, for various reasons. So if you take Wings of Desire, Clockwork Orange, Almost Famous, the films of Wong Kar-Wai, I don't know what that says to me. I'm sure somebody can, some deep learning AI can give a psychological profile of me now. But, I'm always wondering, and I always ask people, like, whenever I meet people I've never met, I'm like, hey, if you were stuck on a desert island, what 10 movies would you bring with you? Now, these are different movies than movies that are my favorite movies. I mean, I think there's an intersectionality between your favorite movies, but I wouldn't say that a lot of my necessarily favorite movies are those movies that speak to my psychology. Another movie that I completely relate to, that speaks to my very soul, is Bob Fosse's All That Jazz. I mean, All That Jazz. Again, a movie that defines everything that is me. You've got a guy that loves women, but he can't help himself. He's a philanderer. He's never satisfied, never his mind on where he was, or always his mind on what he was doing. But that's just another movie that I can't get over. And I'm wondering, what are the movies that define you? Maybe not your favorite movies, but movies that, I mean, they are your favorite movies in a certain sense, but what movies define your soul, who you are? Like, really, if you were going to try and tell somebody, okay, this movie is exactly what I'm about. You're going to give a movie to a significant other to define who and what you are. What would those movies be? Because I'm curious. I'm always curious about that. So there you go. I mean, that was what I was pondering, hearing that Wong Kar-Wai is making Blossoms, and I cannot wait. I hope Christopher Doyle shoots it, because I think their collaboration is one of the great collaborations in all of cinema history. And man, I would love to be on a set watching them work. So let's see who's here today. Willow is here. Willow says, sorry, I can't watch this live. Have to attend my weekly lab meeting. Hope you have a great chat. I still need to see In the Mood for Love. Well, Willow, thank you for that. I will try and have a good chat. I think it's midweek, looking forward to it. Celadon Sound, hello. Celadon, you say, in my dating days, I would use movies and even video games to figure out how someone thought and felt. How does this person respond to the scene, etc.? Right? I mean, because if we have a favorite film and we know what these things are to us, we're sort of using it as a litmus test to see how other people respond. And, if I found it interesting, if somebody really doesn't like something I really like, I wonder, I'm like, why don't they? Maybe we can have a discussion. And I try not to take it personally, although I have shown people movies and they're like, man, it was all right. You're like, what? Look, and I know movies like Wings of Desire they're a tough sit. They're a tough sit. I'm the first person to admit it. But man, let me tell you, I do like that movie so very much. But Celadon, I'm with you. Yes, I define myself through the things that I love. And I hope people look, one of my favorite books in the world is a book, I've said this before, is Donna Tartt's The Secret History. And again, it's a book that just kills me. It's right to the core of my being. Now, I know that book's not for everybody. I know. But boy, do I dearly love that book. As a matter of fact, you know what I'm thinking about? I'm going to go read that book again. Alexander Wilson's here. He says Jordan Peele is more in danger of being the next Shyamalan than the next Spielberg. Oh, and I just saw Us. This is all over Twitter. Oh no. Yeah, what's funny is what's really interesting is I would just like to see Jordan Peele's Us without. I didn't really necessarily have expectations for it. I think it looks really interesting. I really don't know what it's about, but everyone now, I guess everyone thinks that after Get Out, he's supposed to be the second coming. I don't know. I mean, I just want to see a good movie. I think it's great that Jordan Peele's transitioned. I love his comedy and the fact that he's making socially relevant genre fare. I just want to see a movie that's interesting. It's like those horror paperbacks I talked about when I read the back, of something like Robert McCammon's They Thirst. When I read that book in the back of that book in 1981, the cover was really bad, but the back of the book was really cool. And I had to, I would think about it for days. I'm like, I got to go back to the bookstore and get They Thirst. And Us is one of those movies. I saw the trailer. I'm like, I'm in. I can't wait to see it. I think it opens this weekend. If it does, I'm going to go see it tomorrow night. I can't wait. Celadon Sand says, glad you brought this up. Halt and Catch Fire is a great show by default, but never have I felt my soul and beliefs captured better by a piece of art. Yeah, right? Okay. And everyone's telling me you're telling me to watch Halt and Catch Fire. I mean, that's the funny thing. I find it really interesting that we members of the Post-Geek Singularity community, look, we define ourselves by this stuff. We love this stuff because it does speak to our soul. The whole very idea in my mind, if you like science fiction, fantasy, horror, comic books, flights of fancy, that speaks to an optimistic nature, I think, that you have, you inherently have, because to love superheroes is to love the possibilities of mankind. I mean, the Ubermensch, what we really hope to become is embodied by our heroes. And real life heroes as well. I love Churchill. I mean, he might have been a deeply flawed guy, but I've what he was able to do and how he was able to bring Britain through World War II. I've always admired him. I've always admired his speeches. I dearly would have loved to have smoked a cigar with him at one point in time. But the people that we admire, whether it's sports heroes. I mean, I'm doing this podcast with Olympic gold medalist Cody Miller. He's a complete geek, but I also know that he had the drive and dedication to train hard enough to win an Olympic gold medal. So even though I know he loves Harry Potter more than anything in the world, and we can talk about Jim Cotta on a podcast, I still can admire the guy and look up to him because he had the kind of dedication I don't know if it's possible to have in my own life, which is to win a gold medal at the Olympic Games. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I've stuck around and really tried to make it in the film business. And some people say, "Oh, well, Rob, you stuck with it. You've stuck by your guns and whatever." But it's because I have this thing that's grafted into my soul. I can't stop. I have to keep going. So, we'll see. Celadon San says, also, that show, Halt and Catch Fire, took me on a journey of self-discovery, which is great. I think the best stories do, and I think it's not out of the realm. Look, Neil Gaiman's The Sandman, especially when it really begins after it figures out what it is, with issue 8, The Sound of Her Wings, when the character of Death is introduced. That comic book speaks to my soul. It's a comic, but it's a comic book that's about storytelling. So it's an amazing bit of work. And you just never know when these things that we love will take us places. And I think that's why, look, if you're not inspired in some way, shape, or form by the media that you consume, the stories, because again, it's the stories that we tell are really relating things to each other about the human truths. What's it like to live in this world? Even your favorite comic book story, whether it's Superman fighting Captain Thunder, they all have something to say. I mean, all the great stories have shreds of truth in them, and that's what the truth that we find self-evident to us. Just because you might have read it in a comic book or seen it in a science fiction movie, if that truth speaks to you, then it's done its job. That's why I say, as much as I might dislike Star Trek Discovery, if like Joseph, he likes Star Trek Discovery. It's the only Star Trek he's liked since Voyager, and it's great that he does, and it speaks to him. which is terrific. And that's why I'm never going to begrudge somebody for coming to the Star Trek franchise through Discovery. I think it's great. Chinese Deadpool is here. Chinese Deadpool, are you a fan of Wong Kar-Wai? I mean, it's interesting. You know, I always wonder, I can romanticize Wong Kar-Wai's movies because so many of them, whether it's In the Mood for Love or Chungking Express or Fallen Angels, take place in Hong Kong. And I romanticize and mythologize Hong Kong in my mind. You know, it's a city that I've always wanted to visit, not just because Hot Toys' headquarters is in Hong Kong. That's not the only reason. But I've always romanticized it. And so when I've watched, whether I'm watching, you know, a Chow Yun-Fat movie like The Killer or you know, or Hard Boiled or something, or God of Gamblers or A Better Tomorrow, I've mythologized Hong Kong because I've watched these movies. But do the people that live in Hong Kong, when they watch In the Mood for Love, do the people that live in Hong Kong, do they feel that In the Mood for Love romanticizes the Hong Kong of the past, or are they just like, I live in LA, I don't romanticize LA at all, you know? But when people get off, or they get off at Hollywood and Highland off the tourist bus and they're looking around, they have these ideas in their heads about what Los Angeles is like. And I wonder, Chinese Deadpool, do you, as the Chinese Deadpool, do you romanticize the films of Wong Kar-Wai? I mean, do you look at Tony Leung or Maggie Cheung and think those are the people that I want to meet and be? I wonder, do you think I want to go to America? Because I'm thinking, man, I want to go meet Maggie Cheung. So Chinese Deadpool is here. Saw a theory that Thanos using the Time Stone will turn Cap into Skinny Steve, but he never gave up and he keeps going, shouting "Avengers Assemble" or "I can do this all day." Maybe I don't think I would like that, to be honest, but it could happen. You never know. Terry Flynn is here from, I guess, the UK. Terry says, Rob, do you rate Gattaca? Does it stand the test of time? I love Gattaca. Andrew Nichols' film Gattaca. For those of you who don't know, it stars Ethan Hawke, it stars Jude Law, and it stars Uma Thurman, and it stars Gore Vidal. Believe it or not, Gore Vidal is in Gattaca. I love Gattaca. If you haven't seen Gattaca, it's one of the great science fiction films of the last 2 decades. I think it came out in the early 2000s. I mean, I put it up there with Children of Men and Her and Never Let Me Go. I mean, Gattaca is an incredible film, and it's about a future, for those of you who don't know, it's about a future where basically human beings are now perfect. We've been genetically engineered to be perfect, but there are people that aren't, that are less fortunate, and those are not the genetically perfect. And Ethan Hawke plays a character who has had to pass, and he's gone to extraordinary lengths to pass as genetically perfect in this society where DNA and one follicle of hair and the jig is up if you're discovered. It's a phenomenal movie. It's a beautiful, beautiful film. I love Gattaca, and I watch it a lot. And it is a beautiful, a very meaningful movie. So if you haven't seen Gattaca, I highly recommend it. I know it's streaming because it shows up a lot. Next on your watch list is Gattaca. So yes, I think Gattaca is a great movie. I love it. So yes, indeed. Let's see. We'll see what anybody else has to say here. What do you got going on? Learning Disabled Spock. I would stop on that because I still can't get over Learning Disabled Spock. I was just rewatching your favorite A movies podcast, and I was chuckling at the line about people buying vinyl but not Blu-ray. Well, damn. Now I have to reevaluate how I buy movies. You know, it's funny. I mean, there's that movie. There's that movie where Adam Driver is in it, and he meets Ben Stiller and Adam Driver and his girlfriend, and they're like the ultimate hipsters. You got to watch this movie. Why am I drawing a blank? It's like Never Get Old or something like that. I forget what it's called. But I really like. I think Noah Baumbach directed it. I really like that movie, and you got to watch it because it's surprising. But I don't understand vinyl fetish. I don't, because I hated vinyl when I was a kid. Every time you played a record, there was more static electricity, there was more snaps and pops and crackles, and it drove me insane. And American vinyl sucked. I'd have to buy import vinyl. I was a total vinyl snob. I only bought UK vinyl, and I only bought Japanese vinyl. I would never buy American vinyl if I could help it. And it was hard to get soundtrack albums because most of the soundtracks I bought were American vinyl. But I hated vinyl, and the idea that vinyl comes back, I get it with DJ culture, totally understand. But I was like, bring on the CDs. It was like VHS tapes. I had this great collection of VHS tapes. Every time I put a VHS tape in, there was a dropout that wasn't there before. I hated that. So this new digital technology that we have, vinyl, look, vinyl is still, you're basically taking a rock and scraping it across the surface of, well, vinyl. How is that good? There's always surface noise, no matter what you do. I mean, that's just the function of it. I understand, but this hipster, everyone's like, oh, vinyl made a comeback. No, it didn't. Nobody really likes vinyl. Look, DJ culture, it made sense because there's an actual physicality to it. But, when Pioneer started making their CD turntables, but I mean, I get vinyl. And I like watching people. I like watching dudes and dudettes, holding their headphones and spinning. And people that are really talented DJs are great. Give me a Testio show. I'll go there anytime. But vinyl, not a big fan. And look, the whole thing with movies, I mean, to me, if you're a vinyl fetishist and you love movies, you should go back and buy movie prints. That's sort of the equivalent. Go buy a print. Go buy a 35 millimeter print and show it in your home theater. No, I love Blu-rays and now 4K because it's the best home video has ever been. Uncompressed. The picture, the sound. Well, I mean, it's compressed, but the picture and the sound is way more. It's less compressed than you see streaming. So I'm a big fan of home theater, and I will be till the end of time, until they can pry my physical media out of my cold, dead hands. Pre-live teaser says, book recommendation, Charlie Brooker's Screen Burn. It's Charlie's review of TV shows before he wrote Dead Set, Black Mirror. Man, I would love to read that. I didn't even know he wrote that pre-live teaser. I'm going to go order that shit from Amazon UK right now. One of my favorite books about television, were by Harlan Ellison. He wrote a book called The Glass Teat. And he also wrote a book called Harlan Ellison's Watching. That's not just about television, but I love analysis, especially creators that I love. By the way, if you haven't, I tweeted it yesterday, but one of the greatest articles I've ever read about Hollywood was published yesterday. And it talks about, for those of you who don't know, there's a big thing going on with the WGA and the Writers Guild of America, and it's all about agencies and how agencies are basically, they're not representing their clients correctly, and it's really, really interesting, and it really speaks to, if you've ever wanted to be a writer, you ever want to know anything about how the business of Hollywood works or doesn't work. David Simon, who he wrote the book Homicide that was later turned into, I think the book is called Homicide, a Year on the Streets. But so Mr. Simon wrote Homicide, and he talks a lot about how Homicide got turned into a television show, and then he later went on to create The Wire. I tweeted this article, look it up, but he explains how he basically got effed up while he was doing this by his agents. His agents in packaging the show screwed him. And if you want to read, it's I think it's the greatest thing I've ever read on the business of Hollywood. Man, it's great. Look on my Twitter feed, Burnett RM, if you haven't seen it. But I tweeted it yesterday if you want to find the article, or just Google it. It's so good. So good. I read it with laughter throughout my bones when I read it. Anthony Morales says, the only Wong Kar-Wai movie I've seen is Chungking Express. It's a fantastic movie, and I wanted to pick up Fallen Angels on Blu-ray, but it's out of print now, unfortunately. It is out of print. And this is why, like, when movies come out that I really want, you have to get them right away, because then they're out of print and then they go up in value. But of course, I have Fallen Angels on Blu-ray. It's in my Fs. If you watch my Fs, the last one I did. But Fallen Angels, famously, Wong Kar-Wai, when he was making Chungking Express, he actually had 3 stories in mind. Chungking Express is only 2 intertwined stories, but Fallen Angels was the 3rd story he was going to put in there. And he's often said that Chungking Express and Fallen Angels are just this 3-hour movie that he wanted to make. And again, Fallen Angels is good. I can't recommend getting Fallen Angels highly enough. Maybe it's streaming somewhere. Maybe the Criterion channel will eventually have it. Jeff T says there's a cool Thanos omnibus that Marvel's putting out next week that collects his pre-Infinity Gauntlet appearances from the 70s and 80s. Infinity War Omni's coming out in 2 weeks too. Yeah, I have the Infinity Omnibus. It's great. It's thick and beefy, and I like it a lot. So yeah, great stuff. Stubble McShave says, when I saw Ronin in the cinema in 1998, they mixed up reels 3 and 4. We didn't get our money back last time I went to that movie theater. See, I don't know how people do that. They have one job. One job is to show you a movie properly, and they screw up the reels. By the way, that movie kicks ass. I highly recommend the recent Arrow release of Ronin. I love Ronin. You know, John Frankenheimer, one of his last films. Ronin is so good. Jean Reno, Sean Bean, Natasha McElhone, Robert De Niro. God, that movie's good. I love that movie. Terry Flynn says, Keller Sound, though a young guy in Sydney is a dear friend, I was really disappointed that he related more to the ultra short shots in the J.J. Khan film rather than Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I feel like an old fart. Well, don't feel like an old fart, Terry. I mean, you know, nowadays, here's the thing. When I grew up, and I've said this, maybe I've said this before, I think I have. What I found interesting growing up is in the morning before I went to school, I'd watch an Our Gang short, like Spanky and Alfalfa. They'd be on at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'd be eating my breakfast, and I'd watch an Our Gang short, you know, Darla, Buckwheat, Spanky, Alfalfa. Those are made in the 30s, right? And then you'd go to school and you'd come home, and there was a block when you came home from school from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock where they showed programming from, and I'm talking about late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s. And in this block of programming, you'd watch like My Three Sons, or you'd watch the Andy Griffith Show, or Leave It to Beaver. Then you'd watch I Dream of Jeannie, Gilligan's Island, and then The Partridge Family and The Brady Bunch. So in one day, I would watch from the 30s up to the 70s. So you're watching 40 years of Americana, basically. 40 years of American pop culture in these 3-hour bursts. And in those bursts, you really got a sense of the thing about all those stories, especially like in My Three Sons or Leave It to Beaver. Kids always got in trouble, and they always did bad things, and the adults were always the wise, sage-like givers of advice, and you always looked up to your folks. And then in the sitcoms, there was always a lesson to be learned. I mean, human foibles were dealt with. Bewitched and too. I watch Bewitched. I like that. But so you get 40 years of Americana. So Leave It to Beaver was black and white. Certainly the Our Gang shorts are black and white. So we were used to growing up. We were accustomed to watching all kinds of things with different attitudes and different approaches to how they were made. And I don't think growing up now, kids are doing that as much. You know, I don't think, first of all, there's so much to watch. We've talked about how just yesterday, I was talking about how much content there is. There's too much content to keep up with. Going back and watching old content is sort of silly if you're a child of today, which I completely get. So we can't be upset that people relate more to things that are modern, things that are flashy. But what does upset me is that the stories that are being told don't hold together as well. The storytelling is actually much, much worse. And that's what kills me. But, you know, watching Star Trek II, part of Star Trek II is all about being middle-aged. It's all about facing your own mortality and getting older. And what young person wants to deal with that? And in the case when I was young watching Star Trek II, it was because I'd watched my favorite characters grow up. Kirk was 34 when he took command of the Enterprise, youngest captain in Starfleet. And then, of course, we watched him get older. I mean, Star Trek the Motion Picture, he was older, and 10 years later, and then he moves into middle age in Star Trek II. So that was part of the story. But I was into it because I'd already loved Kirk as a young man. So, you know, it's interesting. Trinidad the Island Man says, man, Rob, you broke down the gist of his movies. Great. Ashes of Time is so good. I feel the same way as the guy at the end of that movie. So much sorrowful feelings used as a means of revenge. Oh man, dude, you absolutely. Ashes of Time is great. That's another movie I have on Blu-ray. I do love Ashes of Time, and it took him a long time to make that movie. And it's funny, he made that movie because Days of Being Wild didn't do very well. It was well regarded, but monetarily it didn't do very well. So he went and tried to make a martial arts movie, an action film, to sort of put his name on the map. Then when he made Chungking Express, it won a lot of awards, and even though it didn't make a lot of money, it was well regarded in Hong Kong. But Ashes of Time is what a great movie. I think there's two different versions of it too. Anthony Morales says, I really wanted to see Wings of Desire. The Criterion Blu-ray was on my need to buy list, but I never got around to it. And I think it might be out of print by now. It might be, but you can find it. I mean, Wings of Desire is around, and I highly recommend. The Blu-ray is absolutely stunning. It's gorgeous. And you know what? It'll probably wind up on this Criterion channel. But you know what? When you watch Wings of Desire, you really, I implore you to watch it on a great TV, more importantly with a great sound system. If you can watch it in surround sound, it's really amazing. The sound design in that film, because the angels can hear what people are thinking. And it's not a traditional movie. It's not a dialogue-driven, character-driven movie. It's really it's more like poetry. And when you hear how the voices pan, and how when the angels are floating over the city and they go from one room to the next, the sound design is really amazing. It's really important. You got to watch it with great sound design, because it's awesome. It's really, really awesome. So check that out. Pre-Live Teaser says The Player by Robert Altman is a great Hollywood satire. It absolutely is. Michael Tolkien's book is fantastic. He also wrote a sequel, The Return of the Player. If you like books and you like The Player, read Return of the Player. Read The Player too. It's great. It's one of my favorite Hollywood novels, along with there's another book called Force Majeure that was written by Bruce Wagner. That's a favorite modern Hollywood novel. Well, it's not modern anymore, but it's a favorite modern Hollywood novel of mine. You should check that out or read that book. It's great. Let's see. Shazam Chavez says, hey, Caledon, are you a Joe McMillan, a Gordon Clark, or a Cameron Howe? I don't know what that means. I should know that, I'm sure, but I don't know what that means. Pre-Life Jesus said, Red River with John Wayne, Montgomery Clift, another great Criterion Blu-ray, which you have to get. Brian Eng says, Rob, I'm going on spring break next week. Hope to watch you live. Dude, don't watch me live on spring break. These are archived. Go out and have fun. Go meet girls and drink, or guys, if that's what you want to do. Go drink beer. Go have the kind of spring break that you can only dream of. I don't know. Or you could watch me live. I used to love spring break. I miss spring break. When you get out of college, it's so weird. It's one of those things that rolls around. You read about everybody else going on spring break, and it's just you enjoy your spring breaks, because when they're gone, man, they are gone. Joseph Eric says, oh, Rob, you would not want to be here in the early 90s. Yeah, I probably wouldn't, to be honest. But maybe I would have set up a theater in the war-torn sections of town and brought some people together. I don't know. That's what I'd like to have imagined. Pleasant Valley Picker, California says, Rob, Wings of Desire is great. Some folks just don't get poetry. I am with you, man. When I was at USC, Wings of Desire was playing in Santa Monica, and I wanted to write a paper on Wings of Desire, and it happened to be playing. So I went and saw it, and the theater was mostly empty, and the people that were there, like half of them walked out, and I was so depressed. I was bummed out after that, but it was great. I do still love that movie so much. Damien Boswell says Halt and Catch Fire was amazing. I gotta read. Everyone loves this. I've got to do it. Victor Acosta's here. I can maybe be influenced by the media I consume, but I like to believe that we define ourselves by a mixture of all of our life's experiences. Yes, Victor, that is absolutely true. But I was only speaking about media. I mean, we're the culmination of many different facets. Everything that happens to us defines us. I was only speaking, though, about how we see ourselves in relation to the movies and the media that we consume, mostly movies. I didn't mean to by any. I didn't mean at all to say that we don't define ourselves by other stretches or other things that happen to us. Absolutely. I mean, our friends, our parents, our relatives, our loved ones, our girlfriends, our boyfriends, they all define us. Everything we do defines us. My pet defines me. Gilbert. Oh, he's not here. I don't know where he went, but he defines me. So everything we do. But I was just speaking specifically about how we relate to movies. But you're absolutely right. Scott Dolson says this might sound weird, but my defining movie might be It's a Wonderful Life. I have things that have not been as I wanted in life, but I wouldn't change my life. Things are as they should be. That's awesome to hear. That is great. But I agree with you. It's a Wonderful Life is one of those movies. I mean, what happens is in that movie is very, I think everybody can relate to it, which is why it's endured. It's not just a holiday classic, but it's a classic in the idea of what might have been. And I think everybody thinks that all the time. I mean, there's not a day that goes by that I think to myself, wow, if I had done something differently, maybe this would have happened. I don't regret it, but I just ponder it because you think, okay, I'm going to choose to do this today. What might the ramifications be? And I think that it's an irresistible film. It's a Wonderful Life is an irresistible movie. Adam Gross says, here's my 10. Paths of Glory, Eyes Wide Shut, Kill Bill, Reservoir Dogs, Star Wars A New Hope, The Rope, Alien, Seven Samurai, Akira, and 2001. That's a heck of a list. Wow, that says quite a bit about you too. Very interesting. Victor Acosta says, I'd like to think I'm optimistic, but sometimes the reality that surrounds us makes me think that there really isn't much hope for our deranged species. Hope we can change in time. Well, here's the thing. Here's how I get through the day. Here's how I cope. There's, 7 billion of us now on this planet. And if you think about all the horrors and the atrocities we are committing against one another that we hear about, there's not as much going on as you might think. Even though the death of one person is never a good thing. But, if you think about all the great stuff that happens on a daily basis where nothing bad does happen, I think the good outweighs the bad. And, eventually these things are going to go away. As I said on a podcast earlier today, during an alien invasion, nobody cares what color you are. Nobody cares what your religious affiliation is. Nobody cares what your sexuality is. But when the alien heat weapons or whatever is flying over your heads, all human beings are in the same boat. And we need to start thinking about ourselves that way because, it's so funny to me when we talk about, there's the one world government or the ZOG, the Zionist occupied government and blah, 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 blah. Look, man, one day we're all going to be citizens of this universe and we're all going to be from Earth. And when we start meeting alien races, and I believe we will at some point, that's what people are going to say. They're like, hey, man, you from Earth? They're not going to be like, oh, are you a white person from Earth? Or are you a straight cis man from Earth? They're not going to say that. You're just going to be from Earth. And that day is going to come one day. I firmly believe that it will. I probably won't see it. But one day, we're going to be proud to be together as Earthmen. Stubble McShave says, Jim Butcher, all good pizza toppings was once cute. I don't know what that means. Am I missing that quote? Am I an idiot? But yes, all pizza toppings. You know what? I like that idea. But anyway, I think that Trinidad the Island Man says Gattaca was great. It was when Ethan and Ooman were married, and you just feel their chemistry. Soldiers, and it's a nice detective movie. I love Gattaca. It is a good detective movie. Lauren, what's the actor's name who plays the detective in that? It's great. Zid or Kid Zid. Zid1 says, I saw RoboCop in the cinema when I was 11 or 12. Loved it so much. What were you doing seeing RoboCop in the cinema at 11 or 12? Did you sneak in? I saw RoboCop in the cinema when I was 11 or 12. Loved it so much. I asked my mother to buy it for me on VHS. That was a long 6-month wait, but she did. I think it's great that you even got into the movie when you were 12. Fantastic. Good for you. And tell your mom, thank you from me. Norman Lau says, I think Big Trouble in Little China has to be a defining movie for me because there are parts of Jack Burton, Wang, Egg Shen, and Lo Pan in me. I love that. You know what, Norman? I'm looking at you in a whole different light now. Are you searching for an Asian woman with green eyes, green eyes like creamy jade? Because I am, and I have been since 1986. Learning Disabled Spock says, I didn't so much collect vinyl, but I did have a very large widescreen VHS collection in the days before DVD came out. Yeah, man, I feel the same way. But I had already I'd transitioned to Laserdisc. Midnight's Edge After Dark is here. If something hasn't been remixed from the original tracks digitally from the analog age, sounds very bad on CD because they use the old master. That's true. That is true. But you know, I like they're getting better. They're getting better. The Doctor 1701 says, question, how important is predictability when reviewing movies? I think it's hard for a movie to be surprising. Why it's important to people. Wait a minute. Can you even still hear me? It says chat disconnected. Please wait while we reconnect you. Unable to reconnect to chat. Maybe I'm gone. Maybe I'm talking to no one now. I don't know what happened to that. Maybe it just cut out. I don't know. It's disconnected. I apologize for that, everyone. Well, listen, I guess I will bring then this to an end. I don't know what happened to the live chat here. It's gone. Sorry about that, but I hope you, it was great being here. It was an hour. It was a good chat. Thanks for being here. I appreciate all this, you and the members of everyone here of the Post-Geek Singularity community. Thanks for supporting the channel. Thanks for subscribing. And I will just end this chat by saying, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. And I believe that utterly. And keep those letters coming, everyone. I love hearing from you. I mean, it's incredible the things that you were saying to me. And tomorrow I will read Vesna's letter. If you can even hear that I'm still here. I don't know if I'm still broadcasting. No idea. Maybe I'm completely not on the internet anymore talking to myself. Anyway, I'll bring an end to this. Thanks for being here. It was great chatting with you all. And we'll talk tomorrow at 9 a.m. on the John Campy Show.